archaeoastronomy. Uh, Vidya's introduction was talking about archaeoastronomy. I know you have written a book on the archaeoastronomy of the Vedas and all. So a great debate is going on the timing of Mahabharata based on the archaeoastronomy aspect. That is, I mean, in my view, it is all good because everybody is studying the subject. That's why there are various opinions coming out of it. But there is a argument that archaeoastronomy using the softwares is not accurate enough. So, what is your opinion on dating using the archaeoastronomy and softwares? Or can we calculate the timing of Mahabharata and everything based on archaeoastronomy?
My answer to that is it is useful, but it's also problematic. When these programs go further and further back in time, they're not that accurate. But even if they were accurate, the other problem is to take passages from books such as the Mahabharata or the Ramayana and say that now this is what Bhishma was when he was on the bed of nails, this was the time. There is a lot of interpretation required. And that interpretation can lead to many different results, even if, let's say, the software is perfectly reliable. Just to illustrate this, my good friend who just passed away a couple of years ago, Narhari Achar, he tried to do this for the Mahabharata, and he came up with the date of 3067 for a certain conjunction, which he thought was very consistent. And of course, the good thing about that date, 3068 or 3067 BCE, and the good thing is that it does seem to correspond to the traditional date, which is 3137 BCE, right? Because the starting of the Kali Yuga is 3101 or 3102, which is 35 years after the war, right? So that's the good side. But there's another guy who looked at some of those passages and interpreted that somewhat differently, and he came up with 1600 BCE. So I think what is required in using archaeoastronomy, because I have personally not used archaeoastronomy to date any of this stuff because I am aware of the difficulties with this process. But what I've tried to do and I've tried to focus on is that you have to look at all different kinds of evidence. You also have textual evidence, you have archaeological evidence. Now, for example, in archaeological evidence, you have the fact that the Harappan era seemed to decline starting with 1900 BCE, and then definitely 1700 BCE, when many of the towns and settlements were abandoned, which were on the Saraswati River, and people seemed to move east and south and west, east and south. So you have to see, well, what might have been the basis of it. And then there is something else. You have astronomical references within the text, within the Vedic text, in the Brahmanas, even the Upanishads, and certainly in the Puranas and the Vedas. And these are references related to the fact that the precession of the earth leads to shifting of the seasons 1000 years with respect to each nakshatra, because the precessional cycle is 26,000 years and there are 27 nakshatras, or 27 or 28. So there's a shift of one nakshatra every 1000 years. And you see that the various lists of nakshatras change going on when exactly, which, if you look at later Puranic texts, they start with Ashwini nakshatra, but the earlier ones start with Kritika, which is at least 2000 years prior. So all this tells you that the period that we have goes back to at least 4,000 or 3,000 to 4,000 BCE, the fourth millennium BCE. There are certain astronomical events which are in the fourth millennium BC, or the whole interpretation of stories. So see, for example, Sati's death, the great story of Shiva destroying Dakshas, who was his father-in-law's sacrifice, because Sati killed herself because Daksha didn't invite Shiva. But this is really an astronomical story. Prajapati as one nakshatra, and Shiva is Sirius, and so the beginning of the year shifts from Prajapati, and that's Shiva's destruction of Prajapati. And this is, in fact, a chapter in this book, the whole analysis of it in the book Eternal Bharat, which your readers would find very, very interesting. So coming back to your question, definitely, if you have to be as conservative as possible, because you could always say, well, everything is 50,000 years old or 100,000 years old. You have to be conservative as possible, right? You have to see what is the material evidence that we have on the ground in terms of temples. And now we, of course, discovered that chariot in Sanauli also, which is about 2000 BC, because there used to be this criticism, well, there are no chariots in India, or there are no representation of horse or this or that, but there's no representation of cows also. There are bulls represented. Why not cows? These are very complicated stories, and therefore one's got to have a multi-dimensional, independent, interlocking evidence approach to analysis.